Hey, Nikki Sanders here with Nikki Sanders Leadership Consulting. Welcome back to the More Than Social Work with Nikki Sanders YouTube channel. Thanks for joining me. Today, we are talking about something that is extremely important to me. September is Self-Care Awareness Month, and it's also Emergency Preparedness Month. So my message to you today is self-care includes emergency preparedness. Self-care includes emergency preparedness. So making a plan for what happens in case of disasters or emergencies is not only a way to take care of yourself, but also to protect and take care of your family and your community. Now, September is the height of hurricane season, but disasters and emergencies can happen at any time, depending on where you live and what is happening in the world. So as a young girl, as a student, we had fire drills. That was the extent of it. The generation prior, they had bomb drills. They were getting under their desks. I worked in the public school system in the DC area during 9/11 and the DC snipers, Columbine during the beginning stages of the active shooter drills. So I went through that, but as an adult. So our kids today are literally preparing for active shooter drills in their classrooms. As an adjunct professor, I've taught on multiple campuses, and again, we are preparing our students for active shooter drills in the college classroom. So emergency preparedness doesn't just look like what can happen in terms of a bad person showing up. There are weather disasters, there are natural disasters, there are infrastructure disasters that could happen. So what you want to do is know what the risks are in your particular area, prepare for those, but you also want to prepare for your own personal circumstances and special needs. Seniors, pregnant, medical needs, pets, right? Any special needs that you have, you want to prepare for those as well. So some of us, we just avoid it altogether, right? Don't want to talk about it. Some of us are so far into it that we are what is considered preppers, right? And today I'm going to talk about that middle ground, that space in the middle. For me, because I can go down the rabbit hole and I can get a little anxious, and I'm a recovering control freak, so I want to be prepared for everything. And one of the things that I have said to myself over and over again is preparation over paranoia. Preparation over paranoia. And so that looks like a lot of different things, but in my home, first aid kits. In my car, first aid kits. When I was working with young ladies, of course, every time I went on a field trip, I had period products along with the other things that were needed in the van. Truthfully, I could live out of my car for a few days, but that's a whole nother issue. So I want you to think balance, think middle ground, think preparation over paranoia. So there are these people over here who don't want to talk about it and think by not bringing up something that is hard or difficult or scary that they're doing themselves and their family some good. We're not. We're doing them a disservice. And then there are those people who are totally disconnected from modern society, and they don't want to be connected to any government utilities. They are living, off grid, not participating in the standard economic system that we have here, and, planning to live underground in a bunker and eating food that'll last for 25 years, right? I'm exaggerating that. But again, there is a middle ground and a space between not preparing at all and being a full-on prepper. And you can look up prepper videos after this if you don't know what I mean when I say prepper. So survivalists, all of those things, right? But this time again, we're talking about the middle ground. So we're going to talk about emergency preparedness for yourself and your home, emergency preparedness for your workplace, and emergency preparedness for your career. It's September, so the bugs are everywhere, and part of my self-care is being outdoors. So I am committed to making these videos outside. All right, let's go. So for your home, you want to have an emergency plan. You want to have a basic emergency supplies kit, not just a first aid kit, even though you need a first aid kit and you need to know basic first aid. And you want to be able to have the food, water, supplies that you need if in case there are days after an emergency that you aren't able to get out, go to the grocery store, there's no food, right? And so this is something that is a part of me and has always been a part of me long before the pandemic. Like I said, I was in the school system during 9/11 and in the DC area. So that was a very interesting experience. Interesting is the word I'm just going to use there. It was actually kind of traumatic experience in the DC area. And so even in the DC area, it wasn't until 2011 that I remember there being an earthquake in the area. We've had several earthquakes since then. We've had hurricanes. Tornadoes aren't that prevalent, right? But what happens if there's a snowstorm? What happens if there's a water main break? During the pandemic, there were interruptions to our supply chain. So all of those things are the kinds of things that you need to think about as you prepare your emergency kit. And at a minimum, you want to have 3 days worth of food, water, supplies at a minimum. All right, let's go. Think about it seasonally. So winter, spring, summer, fall. What are the things that you need in the winter that you don't necessarily need in the summer, and vice versa? So preparation is making sure that you have taken an opportunity to think through the potential threats and special circumstances for your area. That includes weather emergencies, that includes seasonal things. And seasonal is a good time to check your preps and your emergency and disaster supplies. Good time, seasonally. Or you can check it when you change the batteries on your smoke detector. But set up a routine and a plan for how you're going to not just store your things personally and safely, but make sure that they are completely replenished, that your food is not expiring, that your family knows where the emergency and disaster supplies are and they're not using them, and that they know what to do in the event of an emergency. So at home, I'm not going to go through everything. You can go to ready.gov, you can go to FEMA.gov, you can go to the American Red Cross website and a dozen other websites, including your state's specific Health and Human Services or Department of Health for your particular state, right? So the information is there. I'm just going to touch the surface. So you need food and water for at least 3 days, and the recommendation is a gallon of water. I feel like a gallon of water a day. You know what? Skip that. I'm not even going to say that because I would have to look down on this paper to tell you the right thing. So Google it, what the recommendation is for how many gallons of water a day per person in each household, what you need to have. So can't survive without water. Water is one. You want to have non-perishable foods, or you want to have a way to prepare your foods in the event of a power outage or a gas outage or a gas leak, any of those kinds of things. So how are you going to sustain yourself? Healthy meals, healthy snacks, food preparation, all of those things are important. And it's important to get food that you know that you and your family are going to eat. Don't just buy things because they have a longer shelf life if you aren't going to eat them. And it's a waste of your money, but it's also a waste of that food. And I'll say this, if you have the funds, I do not recommend going to food banks to get food for your emergency stockpile. One, because most people going to food banks need the food immediately, right then and there. And I just don't want to recommend that, although I know that some people do. All right, so food, water, a way to keep cool or warm depending on the season. You want to have your medications, you want to have period products or baby supplies like diapers. If you have a senior, someone with special health conditions, someone who's pregnant, you want to make sure that you make accommodations and special consideration for any of those numbers of things that will make things just a little bit more challenging in the event of an emergency. You want to have a communications plan, and you want to make sure everybody in your household knows what that communication plan is, and have an evacuation plan if you need to evacuate. Now, if you need to evacuate, having a what I'll call a bug out bag, right, is important. So you can grab things out of your house, and if you have them, duffel bag, storage crate, right, something that's easy to carry, easy to grab, but also something that is safe, and you can keep everything organized and contained. But you also can have it in a book bag, or you can have the bag already in your car. So for me personally, I have clothes that I change out for each season, shoes that I may throw in the trunk for each season, snacks, right? I really could live in my car for a few days. If there's a snowstorm and you're stuck in traffic as a commuter, if there is a water main break and you have to take the long way home, right? All of those things are things that could happen depending on where you live. So you can take the things from your house out with you in the case of an evacuation, or you can already have things in your car, so you can just jump in the car from wherever you are. If you're at the mall, if you're at work, you already have things that will sustain you for a day or two in your car. So home and car, communications, food and water, supplies, stored safely, stored in containers that are easy to carry. This video is longer than I thought. At work, same thing. You can have your emergency kit at work that includes a first aid kit and all of the things that we've mentioned for at home. And instead of having those things in your desk, in your drawer, right, you can have them in your car. Again, if there is an emergency at work and you can't leave and you're stuck at work, if there is something that happens at work and you have to shelter in place, what do you have available in those situations? Food, clothing, water, emergency supplies, household supplies, cleaners, deodorant, something to clean your hands, right? Sanitation is extremely important. And then your career, right? So self-care includes emergency preparedness in terms of your career. So actually, let me backtrack. Workplace. All employers should have an emergency evacuation or disaster plan, just like you have at home. So managers, supervisors, leaders, founders, CEOs, COOs, you should also be planning and preparing for the safety of your business and the safety of your staff or employees. How is your business going to function and operate after a disaster? And if the pandemic didn't show us anything when things were shut down for weeks and months on end, it is that we have to plan and prepare to keep our businesses going after a disaster, before, during, and after a disaster. And it's much easier to navigate when you have already done the thinking and planning ahead of time. So just like you plan and prepare for home, you can do the same thing for work. And social workers, there are social workers who are working in disaster preparedness. There are social workers who are working in emergency management. There are social workers who are working in risk management. All of those career areas are something that social workers would be great in. So after this video, you can take some time and go look at emergency and disaster response and preparedness and management as a career as a social worker. But back to your career. Self-care includes emergency preparedness, even for your career. So what does that look like? One, emergency preparedness for your career looks like if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. So show up and be visible. People need to know what you do, how you do it, how well you do it, how often you do it, how you're saving money, how you're bringing in clients. You need to take credit for your work. So be visible, show up, let people know that you're doing an amazing job. So that's one way in terms of preparing for disasters and emergencies that could happen in your business. They need to know that you're bringing value and contributing. The second is accuracy, or be accurate. Documentation, social work 101. So definitely documenting the things that you have done in your resume, that means updating your resume quarterly. That means any professional development or credentials that you have, make sure that you're documenting and you keep track of those things. But it also means an event of an emergency. If something happens with technology or your systems, how have you documented and recorded the things that you have done, right? So is it a Google Drive? Is it a flash drive, right? Like, where is your work being stored, and where are your contributions being documented, recorded, stored? And again, if you have to work from home for 6 weeks, how are you going to do that? So again, accuracy and documentation are extremely important. And if you're not comfortable, at the pandemic, I actually went to work in an organization where everything was still pen and paper. There was nothing that was digitized, right? And so part of the challenge was getting people up to speed. So you don't want to wait until a disaster comes to have your technology in place in terms of your specific career. Is it LinkedIn? Is it a website, right? Do you have a portfolio? All of those things are important in terms of preparing for any kind of emergencies that could happen in your career. And the last thing is really being intentional about the kind of work that you do, being intentional about work that showcases your talents, experiences, skills. But it also means being intentional about the connections and relationships that you have, your network. So in an emergency, your network, in a crisis, your network is going to support you, root for you, open doors for you. So be intentional about the kind of connections that you make. Make sure that they're reciprocal, make sure that they're valuable, make sure that you are helping people as much as they are helping you, and that you're not giving, that you're giving just like you're taking or receiving. Make sure that there is balance in those relationships. So again, you're going to prepare your home, your car, your family for emergencies and disasters, whether they're natural or man-made or, climate change, right? You're going to prepare your workplace, whether you're a leader or an employee, to make sure that you are okay and safe before, during, and after a disaster. But make sure that the organization or your business is also able to be up and running and safe before, during, and after a special incident or a disaster or a crisis. And then you're going to prepare your career for any kind of emergencies that could happen by showing up and being visible, by being accurate and documenting all of your work, and keeping everything together in terms of this is how we operate, this is what we do, having systems and processes in place, especially in terms of technology. And you're going to be intentional about the kind of resources and connections that you make, so that your network is also a part of your emergency or disaster response plan. So, self-care includes emergency preparedness. This is Nikki Sanders with Nikki Sanders Leadership Consulting. Like, comment, share this video. Let me know what else it is that you would like to talk about on the More Than Social Work YouTube channel. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you again for the next video on More Than Social Work with Nikki Sanders. Facebook, Instagram, Nikki Sanders CEO, LinkedIn, Nikki Sanders MSW, and NikkiSanders.com. All right, I'll see you back here for the next video. Bye.